Greetings, ladies and metal-gents, and welcome to this narration of the web series Solo Apocalypse. If you're new to the series, there is a playlist listed in the description. And as always, I hope that you enjoy. Chapter 42. On the outskirts of Roothaven, where the meager illusion of civilization faded and the swamp seeped, I perched above the canopy meant for birds larger than humans. Moss on every branch, such that any wrong step could be fatal. Fatal for a regular climber, that was. My clone was one of many scouting the area and eyeing the wildlife. By now, all my clones, save for the unreachable, were renewed. Burst was still with the group from the library, vying for the end of the swamp. I checked in on him on occasion, watching through my own eyes, even as the journey I might make myself in truth. In the meantime, I did my best to catalogue the wildlife and, more importantly, the dangers of the apocalyptic swamp. As Gary had said before, the most dangerous thing to roam the place was probably burnt to a crisp, but that didn't mean that the swamp was any less hazardous. One of those not quite wolves could kill just as easily as a root mother mind control. I ducked as a large insect buzzed around my head, swatting it away. Somehow, the bugs were the worst annoyance. My increased constitution came with an improved ability to regulate temperature. Normally, I'd be sweating right now, but with the influx of stats, along with the symbiote, the humidity and heat were only a small nuisance. The bugs, however. My clone was amongst three others in this particular scouting party, crouching low in the branches above, observing a group of goblins from three different vantages. A wooden bow with string made of spider silk in each of their hands, and a dozen bows to each quiver. The breeze shifted, arrows pulled against bowstring, and I sighted, and... "Can't have them do this!" A man, one of them had recently returned from the Sleeperwood, albeit for only a day, was complaining amongst a gathering of people who'd actually delved the dungeon. "It's a huge natural resource," Gary said. "Blitz won't be able to hold control of it, not with too many of us complaining about it." "We've managed to gather a number of useful items from it," said a person, wearing what looked like a leather cuirass. "If Blitz controls it, his power will cement. Then we overthrow him, easy," another person said. "And risk bloodshed? Then why the hell not? I've already seen people die. That dungeon, I swear, it spawned as a result of the field boss dying. It has to be our key to survival." His voice elicited a chorus of agreement. "I've got a new skill too, shove off man. They're a higher level, which means they have more stats. They're stronger, faster. We can't just fight them without risk. We already have the swamp creatures to worry about." I sat towards the back, higher up on the roots. The meeting took place between two of the larger ones, gnarled and branching enough that they formed the likeness of a tiered seating. It was true, Blitz and his gang now was a little inconvenient. The death of the field boss, the root mother hive mind, beat up this entire clearing. The clever monsters of the swamp had been avoiding this place at first. Now they were creeping back in, the swamp reclaiming parts of itself lost to the boss. Even the ruins of the skyscraper were already covered with vines, lichen, and moss. The few campfires of the does unbothered by the charred remains of the hive mind around it. The argument droned on, and, weirdly, I found myself unfocused, or rather, focused entirely on another perspective, the feeling of freedom, exploration, and roaming. I never felt so unchained in my life, despite what these thugs were doing. Was it really my problem? The answer was easy enough. I had already planned to leave the swamp. The dungeon had been a detour, and it still is, considering the rewards it could give me. But the end goal, what was all out there? In my sanctuary, I lounged comfortably, rays of sunlight shining through the windows, lying on my couch. The moonlight flowers bloomed silver, almost perking up at the sun. I gathered that they liked the shade though, which made sense given their origins, so they were sheltered from direct sunlight. But those small trophies weren't my focus though. I was paging through the book. The only thing I'd pilfered from those ruins in the Twilight Elemental was protecting. The one thing, the aspect of Solo's instinct having to do with opportunity, had reacted to so far. Not an item at all, just a mundane book. Mundane as far as the system was concerned, that was. To my senses, it was like a beacon if I focused. To the naked eye it seemed unobtrusive and unassuming, but the longer I stared, the more I could almost imagine the symbols moving. Speaking without sound, dancing in my senses as if to spell out, I blinked gently, shutting the book and looking around. My inner paranoid self darted to the description in my title. Title: Trailblazing Vanquisher of the Hive Mind. Few possess the capacity to challenge insurmountable odds as you do. You are the first in the world to defeat any field boss, and the first in the world to do so alone. In defeating the Root Mother Hive Mind under these circumstances, you are forever distinguished by your feat. All attributes are increased by 10, you gain telepathy skill, you are immune to external influences upon your will. I confirmed that last effect and glanced back down at the book. What exactly are you? I said slowly, trying to remember the room I'd found it in. The memory came easy, likely an effect of my enhanced mental attributes. It had been some kind of study, a storeroom of academic objects, oddities, and peculiarities, literature mostly. But this book, among all the scrolls, containers, diagrams, and all else, stood out the most to me. And the moment we had left the ruins, the twilight elemental had killed my clothes, just a flash of moonlight. That was all I could remember before we were being chased. Did me leaving the ruins with something trigger the area, boss? I asked myself. The timing fitted. I doubt it was the book in particular. I sighed, opening it once more. This time I welcomed the dancing symbols. Symbols that seemed to dance in my mind's eye, crawl across the page, and wrap around the iris. Symbols that curled around the ears, flooded the nose, and caressed the skin. Symbols that spoke to each sense and told me of... My eyes widened as I was suddenly reading. The symbols no longer danced, they took shape instead, formed images, sound, sense, and touch, filtering at a speed of my own thoughts and comprehension. They fluttered fast, moving on between concepts, taking full use of my mental capacity. And three things happened. First, there was a feeling, a new one beyond the solar's instinct, like a spark of electricity, a rush of energy from the very being. Then it faded before I could even grasp it. My attention whisked away to more important matters. Second came from the perspective of my clones. I stood upon the branches, familiar perches by now, and spotted what was perhaps the largest gathering of goblins I'd yet seen. The noise and din of their being was enough to drown out the buzz of insects, replacing it with chatter and gibberish. There were easily hundreds of them crawling across the roots, hooting at each other, brandishing weapons, and stripping the swamp. I stared, recalling the increased patrols. That's why I was seeing more of them. Forward scouts. There's a whole tribe. Were they reclaiming the area lost to the field boss? And lastly, an ember of hope that humanity was not yet lost. Build noticed. Gerard Malot has achieved a feat worthy of global recognition. He is the first to establish a settlement skyward, and the first to settle the floating island of Alau. I blinked as the meeting quieted. Murmurs are all around, the argument stilled. I cocked my head, and the question I had was in everyone else's thoughts. It took only moments for someone to voice it. What's a settlement? And when he asked it, the word had the ring of the system about it. End of chapter. I would quickly like to thank our Tier 5 patrons and channel members: Casper Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, it's difficult to pronounce, Lord Arishikal, Dragzoon WRE, and Arcadian. Thank you very much.